Welcome to our first official episode of Holistic Hip Hop. Now, I know this was supposed to be on IGTV, on IG Live rather, but we had some complications, and so we had to do it in another way. So I'm going to be interviewing my brother here on Zoom, and we're going to record it, and then we're going to put it on Instagram, put it on YouTube. And this might be the way I do it sometimes, depending on I might be talking to somebody on the other side of the world, and it might be a weird time. It just might make more sense for people. So I appreciate this platform of Zoom and being able to record. But anyways, Holistic Hip Hop. This is the first official episode, and I'll be talking to hip hop artists. I'll be talking to people within the holistic healing community and trying to build that bridge between the two. So we got my brother pulling up right now. About to let him into the room. How do I do that? Is he here? Hold on, y'all. Oh, there you go. Isn't it?
What's up, Bratty?
What's good? So I already started the recording. Gave a little intro, and you ready?
I'm ready, yeah.
All right, cool. So first of all, let me introduce my brother here. My brother AJ. If you can't tell, this is my twin brother, and he's been a big influence for me on my spiritual journey. And he's an incredible person, incredible role model, and I think that y'all will really love him, especially if you love me. And I'm grateful that my first episode, I can be here talking to my brother and introducing him to the world. So you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say that I love you, and you've been a really big influence on my spiritual journey as well. Like I've noticed several times where I've taken it to a level and then you've taken it a little bit further, and like we've kept growing like that. So say that. I am a Comedic yoga facilitator. So what that means to me is that I help to facilitate the experience of yoga from the perspective of ancient Kemet. And for those of you that don't know what ancient Kemet is or what Kemet is the indigenous name that was given to the land of northern Africa. I guess it'd be like northeast Africa. And it was called Kemet before it was called Egypt. Egypt is the name that it was given by the Greeks. So another part of what I do is help to restore the African narrative of ancient Kemet, and really to restore balance in the world in terms of establishing the greatness of Africa, which has been almost forgotten for the last 500-600 years. But there was so much greatness for thousands of years prior to this phase that we find ourselves in. So seeing this, I feel like it's my responsibility to share the information that I receive with the world, and also to be honest and say that I do not know everything, and I also have the potential to be incorrect about some of the information that I provide. So I'm always learning, even though I can be called a teacher or an instructor. I also have aspirations of being a health coach. I haven't really started that yet, but it's in the works as I'm working on myself. I also am a poet, an MC/poet, MC poet, however you want to put it. Really have gotten involved deeply in the community that I presently am in Arcata, California. I'm actually a part of the poetry community, which we call Word Humble. And I've also been working with several other organizations. These organizations, apart from Word Humble, happen to be Black, or as I like to call Al-Kebilite organizations. One of them is centered around arts. The other is centered around like Black-owned business and connecting the Black community, uplifting the community. So that's pretty much what I'm involved in at this time.
You said Al-Kebilite. I don't think everybody knows what that term means. So could you just drop in a little bit about that term, Al-Kebilite?
So Al-Kebilite is basically a term that I made up, but it stems from Al-Kebilan, which, according to information that I've come across, is one of the original names of the continent now known as Africa. And I noticed that, you look at Israelite and Kemite. There's a whole bunch of different ites, and Al-Kebu-lite, it just has light in it. So I thought that was really cool, like we're the light of the world, melanated people. And also I want to mention that I'm only half Al-Kebu-lite, but I have pride in that part of myself, and I have acceptance of all other parts of myself as well as pride. But I feel like in this present time, in this body that I'm in, it's important for me to build up the pride and the sense of empowerment in the Al-Kebilite side of myself. So
when you say the word pride, I feel like, there's kind of a negative connotation to that word pride. So when you say pride, what do you mean by pride? So people don't take that out of context.
Right. I get that. When I say pride, I mean, like when you do something good or you do something spectacular, your parents say, "I'm proud of you." Mm-hmm. And that's that feeling when you hear that and receive that is a positive thing, I feel like. And that's how I see pride. And I could see there being a downfall to pride. But when praise is given and received, to me, that's real pride. And I feel like it's really important for people, all people really, but especially melanated people, to have pride in their self, in their melanin, in their physical body, because for the past 500, 600 years, there's been a complete suppression and oppression of our people. So I think it's really important that we reestablish pride in ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Thanks for clearing that up. So I have just a couple questions, and for the sake of the interview, I'm going to pretend like I don't know the answer to some of these questions. I really don't know the answer to some of these questions. But yeah, I'm going to act like you're not my brother and I haven't heard a lot of the things that you're saying.
All right.
So could you briefly explain, you told us a little bit about what Kemet is. But could you tell us about what Comedic yoga is? What Smai is?
Okay. So Smatawi is a term in Medu Necher, and it means union of the two lands. So you can break that down. Sma or Sema means union, and Tawi is two lands. So union of the two lands, that's what Sama or Sma Tawi means. And it also alludes to Set and Heru, who are two characters in the most famous and long-lasting story throughout Kemet, which is the resurrection of Asar. And I could go deep into that, but that'll probably take a long time. Basically, Heru represents the higher self, the spirit of perseverance and virtue, and Set is the lower self, representing just survival and lust and a lack of control of basically the life force energy. So Smatawi or Sematawi also relates to the union between the higher self and the lower self, or Heru and Set. So Comedic yoga is, to me, Comedic yoga is an experience. It's the experience of unifying the mind, the body, and the spirit. And all yoga practices share that same quality of the connection between mind, body, and spirit. But what makes Comedic yoga different is the fact that it's steeped in the Kemetic culture and spirituality. A lot of the poses are representations of the Necheru, which are what the Greeks would call gods and goddesses, but what the ancient Africans referred to as cosmic forces. So for example, we have Shu, who represents air and the breath. And we have Asar, who represents resurrection, and he's also green, so he represents fertility. And we have Aset, who is the wife of Asar, and she represents that nurturing mother wisdom. And she actually is the one who gathers all the different pieces, the 13 pieces of Asar together, and, which leads to the birth of Heru, who is the representation of not only the sky and of the falcon, which can see for 2 miles and can, of course, can fly super fast and has all these qualities to it. So the ancient Kemites, they looked at their environment, they looked at nature, which is pretty closely related in sound to Necher or Necheru. And they took these qualities and they made stories and symbols out of them and connected them to lessons. So, for example, there's Jehuti, who is known also as Thoth by the Greeks. And he's represented by the ibis, which is a bird that can turn its head, 180 degrees back. So it has the ability to see the past while moving forward. And that's where, that's they have little gems hidden in everything because they relate it with nature, and they're really observant of nature as well as the stars, and they developed astrology. Actually, they might have already known astrology before the pre-dynastic period.
Right. And that's because, why is that? Why do you assume that?
According to the most recent information I've received, there was actually evidence, or the symbol of the Ankh was seen in South Africa, and it was dated back I'm just going to make something up, but it was far back. It was like 500,000 years or something like that. So
It was in the
According to,
hundred. It was in the hundreds of thousands of
it
years.
was in the hundreds of thousands, and the pre-dynastic period of Kemet goes back, according to most scholars, like 3,000, 6,000 before Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a sign that they were already well aware of astrology for hundreds of thousands of years before they developed Kemet. I feel like I'm gonna go to what was the question?
The question was, what is Comedic yoga?
Okay,
You
so
you kind
Comedic
of
yoga,
covered that.
yeah, Comedic yoga. Um, there's poses that we call Comedic yoga. So, for example, the pose of a sar would be classified as Kemetic yoga, as well as Ujjara, which is the sequence, the Kemetic sequence of sun salutation, and various other poses and postures and sequences are categorized as Kemetic yoga. But what else is important to this practice that I've been taught is what's called the yoga skills method. And this applies 4 different principles. I think it's 4. I'm just going to count them down. So the first one is rule of 4 breathing, which is a way of breathing where, first of all, we're breathing from the diaphragm and we're holding the breath at the top before exhaling and then holding the breath at the bottom. So the breath is broken into 4 parts. And then we have geometric progression, which is the gradual evolving of the poses. So we go from simpler poses to more complex poses. We also tend to repeat postures 3 times. And this has a significance in what you'll see in the symbol of the Ankh is there's the staff, there's the womb, and then there's the line across, which represents the children. So that's the Holy Trinity, is the family. So we do things 3 times to create length naturally over time, as well as to connect with that, principle of the Trinity. And also, I would like to mention that it's representative of individuals too. So the masculine and the feminine within us, and then our physical beingness, is a relationship between those 2 energies. So it's not just related to the heteronormative family, it's related to everybody. And yeah, so that's geometric progression. And then we apply what's known as tongue connection, or Kechati Mudra. And that's where we place the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth. And this, so according to the Indian yogis, the tip of the tongue represented, I'm not sure which side, but we have 2 sides. We have, I believe, Ida and Pingala. Mm-hmm. And one of them relates to the tip of the tongue. One of them is the roof of the mouth. So when we connect the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, we create, in essence, a continual circuit of energy and balance between the masculine and the feminine, or the right and left hemisphere of the brain. And we do this throughout the whole practice. And this leads to what is known as the mental skills of patience, perseverance, self-control, self-reliance, heightened awareness, and various other mental skills which you will experience yourself, in the practice. So that's the basics of Comedic yoga and the yoga skills method.
When was Comedic yoga developed, and where? Do you know?
Comedic yoga. So I've seen 2 origin stories of Comedic yoga. One begins back in like 1960 something with a French, I believe he was French African man who was a practitioner of yoga. I'm not sure which style. It might have been like Bikram or something like that. But he actually went to Kemet and observed the Medu Neter and like saw postures in the hieroglyphs in the Medu Neter, and that led him to believe that they were practicing yoga, back in ancient Kemet, the physical asana practice of yoga. So upon seeing that, applying his yogic understanding to the Medu Neter, he brought it back with him and kind of developed this practice of Comedic yoga. And then in the United States, it was developed by, what's his name? Dr. Asar Hapi and his student, who is also my teacher. Why am I drawing a blank right now? Yasir Ra Hotep. Mm-hmm. And they developed it back in the 1970s.
During the whole civil rights movement, or the Black Power movement, rather, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it was actually developed with the intention of drawing in the African spiritual seeker, because at the time, there were African people that were practicing yoga and meditation, and yoga and meditation in reality are universal. Mm-hmm. But there's still this sense of almost like, this isn't mine, So they were really able to develop the practice and create the sense of, okay, this is something that belongs to my ancestry and feels in alignment with my human beingness, in this melanated body.
Mm-hmm. So what are the benefits of practicing Comedic yoga, both in like a very physiological sense and more so in a spiritual sense, especially for the BIPOC community?
So physiologically, this practice really focuses on aligning the spine, the vertebral column of the spine. If you happen to engage in the practice, you'll notice that we do a lot of movements where we turn the neck to both sides, and also we bring the neck back. And we're in an age where we spend a lot of time with our head like this, with our head down looking at our phone. So really, we're just kind of reversing the unconscious ways that we're basically creating tension in our bodies. And really the aim of all yogic practices is to sit comfortably in meditation, because it's in meditation where you experience samadhi, or deep meditative absorption, to the point where you become one with the object of meditation. And in order to do that, of course, you have to first get your body prepared to sit for potentially hours. So most asana practices were developed with the intention of creating the proper environment for people to sit for long enough to have that experience. And this practice is really no different in that way. But what is different about it is the attention that's placed on the breath and the slowness, gentleness of the practice. And I've noticed from my own experience that I am building strength without really doing, calisthenic type or weight training exercise. So it has the potential to build kind of lean muscle, creates more.
To build and to maintain.
To build and to maintain, yeah. also really kind of gets us aware of our breath and helps us to deepen the breath and bring the breath deeper into the diaphragm, into the lower lungs. It really, the whole practice stretches the whole body from toes to the neck. I don't know if you can stretch your head, but
yeah, I was wondering why you skipped the head. That makes
yeah,
sense. You can't really.
from the neck down all the way to your toes.
Mm.
The full sequence, which is anywhere from 90 minutes to like 2 hours, will stretch every part of your body. And also move your spine in all 6 directions.
Mm-hmm.
This practice, in short, it really aligns your body, it strengthens your body, it gets you more in touch with your body, and it brings your breath, it creates a bridge between your mind and your body with the breath.
Mm.
And then the psychological benefit, I've noticed it's not exclusive to Al-Kebulite people. It's more prominent in Al-Kebulite people because of the connection to ancient Africa. But really, the psychological benefit is experienced by everybody. But to speak more towards the benefit towards the Al-Kebulite community, I've noticed from myself and with the people that I've had the privilege in sharing this practice with, that there's this sense of connection with the practice that is not present in the Indian or even Asian cultured yogic practices. And I think for most people, they don't even notice that that's something that they don't experience, from these practices. And I noticed it with my own experience when I first engaged into the practice. I was like, this feels good on a level that I didn't even know I wasn't having previous in my practice with Vinyasa style of yoga. Not to say that anything is better, but for our people, for our Kebulite people, there's such a benefit in having that feeling of connection ancestrally and really spiritually with the practice.
Representation.
And representation, exactly, that representation. And then really the practice helps to reduce stress and to release tension. And the Kebulite community specifically experiences a heightened amount of tension, especially with the things that are going on in the world and in this country, more specifically involving race. There's a lot of
Going on in the world.
Truly in the world.
I'm noticing that here actually. And, you go to a lot of the churches out here, for instance, and a lot of the people in the church are very dark. The Mayan people are very dark. And like, I'm light skinned here. But, they got all these pictures of Cesar Borgia, of white Jesus. And I just I wonder what that makes them feel and like what that makes them think, because a lot of them really reject their culture. They reject their language, their native language. They reject their native culture. And I think that's important to have that pride, I guess you're saying, yeah, of our origins, because ultimately, like, the ways that are being given to us are not helpful. You know, the Mayan people here, for instance, have been perfectly fine for thousands of years without Christianity. And now you go here, people are dirt poor, the lake is polluted, the land is polluted, people are sick, people are struggling really hard. And before colonialism, before Columbus, they're doing great. They built a great civilization, and like I'm learning a lot about the civilization here. So I'm definitely seeing how this is a worldwide issue. And yeah, this colorism and really colonialism, neo-colonialism is it's a big issue right now. And I could see how Comedic yoga can be so helpful for our community.
Right. It's empowering, you know. It creates, and to me, it's like I noticed that there's an empowerment that becomes almost toxic, and I kind of see it prevalent within the community. But this empowerment that comes from this practice, in my opinion, is so beneficial and healing because it's not empowering at the sake of others' power. Like it's not bringing power to Kebelites, to Black people, and excluding power from anyone else. It's just returning us to the recognition of our power, you know? So it's calming too. It's not aggravating, you know, because like some information that we receive is really empowering, but at the same time, it gets us pissed off, you know? But this information, really we're receiving information through the postures and the movements. And this information we receive actually makes us calm, and it makes us centered, and it powers us personally, but also gives us this feeling of connection with others so that we can spread that power amongst each other.
Yeah, I think you know, a word that I think of when you say empower, when we say empower, is confidence. And confidence is necessary. Any strong leader that exists out there has confidence. And I think there's been a little bit of damage done with not necessarily per se the spiritual systems in themselves, but the way they've been employed and delivered to where confidence and being proud about yourself and your accomplishments is frowned upon.
Yeah. That's another thing. Now that you bring that up, I feel like what's different about this practice is that we're not really going off of the 8 limbs of yoga. Not to say that the 8 limbs of yoga are not beautiful and powerful in their own, but there's a cultural disconnect because this was created thousands of years ago. And the ironic part is that ancient Kemet existed thousands of years ago, but they had a sense of understanding of duality and the knowledge and how to operate in duality. And this is also, to me, prevalent in other African traditions. If we look at Ifa, or recently I've been learning about the Dagara culture. And there's this connection with nature. There's a connection between the masculine and the feminine. And that doesn't seem to be prevalent in all spiritual practices. There seems to be this desire of transcendence. Mm-hmm. And at the expense almost like ignoring nature, ignoring our humanness. And this practice integrates the humanness with the transcendence.
That's also something that I've been noticing about the Mayan culture is the integration. There's not a separateness and like a pushing away of a lot of things that do get pushed away and suppressed in a lot of these spiritual systems. It's more of like a human You have to be, you have to be natural first before you become supernatural, right? So I really appreciate that about a lot of these indigenous systems and spiritualities. It's like the fullness of them. They just feel full, more grounded. Okay, so what made you choose to take the path of being Comedic yoga? I don't know if you want to use the word teacher or facilitator. Like, what word do you prefer?
I prefer facilitator.
All right, so what made you want to take this path of being a Comedic yoga facilitator?
I actually started my training in Vinyasa yoga, and I really dived in love with yoga. I remember, I think it was like on my 22nd birthday, our 22nd birthday, on Earth Day. I'm 27 now, so that's 5 years ago. And I saw the power of the practice or the ritual then, and I just wanted to continue to develop it and create a lifestyle of it. And then even from the beginning, I was like, I want to teach this, I want to extend this offering. And now I think it's 2 years ago, I started that training with the Vinyasa. But around that time, I was also experiencing a bit of an identity crisis. I started to feel almost like I was neglecting my blackness, and it started to actually feel weird to be practicing the yoga and offering, being in the stage of almost being offering it to the community. And I even had a sense of what's the word, cultural appropriation. And it was really confusing because it's like, I don't know, I thought Black people couldn't do cultural appropriation. And I knew about Comedic yoga. I'd known about it for years, but I couldn't find any videos on YouTube. Couldn't find any local people teaching it, so I just never really engaged in the experience. But I knew of Yes Sir Rahotep and that he had a course, and it kept popping up on my feed. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. When I have the money, after I finish this training and I've taught Vinyasa for a while, I'm gonna do the Comedic yoga training. And that was my idea. But then actually somebody local in Arcata was teaching Comedic yoga to the community, the Black community, for free. So I went to almost all of her classes. It was a month-long thing. And I brought up that I was currently about to finish my Vinyasa training. And I told her that I really wanted to do the Comedic yoga, but I was kind of waiting to work up the funds for it. And he was actually offering a mini certification, so it was less expensive. And I still didn't have the money at the time, but I was talking with her, and she said something about, because she's also an West African dance teacher, and she said everything I do is Afrocentric. And I was like, man, I wish I could say that. And then I went for it. I told my partner, who supported me and actually gave me what we call a duck loan. for for the mini certification, and I did the month-long training and started right away teaching Comedic yoga. So even though I had that previous experience with Vinyasa, I decided just to go straight into teaching Comedic yoga. And I'm actually really grateful for the Vinyasa training because it prepared me for this Kemetic training and also helped to fill in some of the gaps and provide some more kind of up-to-date information on anatomy and physiology. But really, it was kind of divinely appointed, I feel, for me to get into this practice and then start sharing it with the community. And also, this happened to be around the time of George Floyd's murder. So it came right on time for me in that as well, and kind of establishing a sense of peace and empowerment and helping me to engage in a practice, in an experience that would help me to mitigate a lot of the stress that was coming up at that time. And it was actually, the certification was titled Comedic Yoga for Healing Ancestral Trauma and Inner Alchemy. So super fitting.
Yeah, ancestral trauma. It's a very important topic. And I actually have an experience to share with you about that, but not for this interview. But yeah, that's very important, the ancestral healing aspect of it. And I could say when I practice Comedic yoga with you, that I definitely feel that connection, that ancestral connection, and that empowerment that comes from the practice. And I often get visualizations of like Kemetic symbols and like insights as well. And yeah, it's a very powerful practice. So I want to switch gears a little bit. And, not only are you a Kemetic yoga facilitator, but you're also a poet and an MC. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your poetry and your music. And maybe we could start off, I don't know if you know any poems off the top of the head right now, but maybe you could start off giving us a little flow right now.
I probably have some off the top, but I would rather just read something. I got something new written, so.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Something I haven't heard yet?
No, you haven't.
All
Shared
right.
it yesterday.
I want to hear it.
I don't know if I extended this to you, but I had this idea because I heard a line in one of your songs and I was like, wow, that line it was just so deep. So I decided to write that line and then continue a poem from that line. And I wanted to extend that to you. Like if you heard a line from any of my poems or songs that we worked on, to do the same thing.
All right,
so this
cool.
by that.
What song was
I'm gonna
this?
try to Lifted.
Okay, cool. Classic.
I can see the light through the vision of my shades when I'm lifted. I recognize I'm gifted. I don't gotta drift when I'm present. Life reflects the mind, now I get it. So I keep my eyes on the heavens. My body stays on earth. I'm grounded, but I'm headed towards levitation. Elevated states of meditation. I move propelled by what I'm facing. Every reflection I face when the ego drops has me reminded how the ego spots sustenance. Or a falcon, matter of fact, how it spots from 2 miles where it needs to be at. Now I see that. I stick by what I speak as facts. Call me out, remind me. if ever you see me slipping from what I speak, you were always part of my mission. That's for the hearts of those listening that I am part of. The wisdom imparted on me comes from those who have part of my seeds. Turbulent waters I would stall for the steeds that I was stalling to see. They are finally exposed to the heart on my sleeve. It slipped from all of the woes, joy that follow my needs, being met by the all. I call that peace. Acknowledge my share in the bigger picture. It speaks more than volumes. Every little piece that I call through speaks for itself and absorbs through my soft grooves, fuels the mind that I breathe when I'm called to lead by example as we all do. We evolve to break through the patterns we've evolved through, solving what we call problems. This all proves my theory that if you can just see clearly the obstacles becomes what's possible. Moving beyond what we thought was true to transcend the ways, going from fall to flu. If all we knew was love and potential, that the world was all mental, we would all be free, even though rents do.
We would all be free, even though rents do.
That's just a random, but it made sense. So
no, I love that about your flows, is that they kind of just take on a life of their own, you know? And it touches a lot of different subjects and like a lot of different realms of reality. It's very spiritual, but it's also very human at the same time. It's like fully encompassing.
I appreciate that.
So you actually have a poetry ebook out right now called Journey to a Mentor. So if you can just talk a little bit about that, talk about the title, Journey to a Mentor, talk about like what is the subject matter of the project, and yeah, whatever else you feel like you can add.
Journey to a mentor. First of all, a mentor can be viewed as like the Kemetic version of heaven, but really it's the Kemetic afterlife, where ancestors, deceased people would go to before going into the hall of judgment. And to me, I felt like I was experiencing an awakening in consciousness, in African consciousness, Comedic consciousness, prior to creating this chapbook. And I noticed it in my writing because my early writing had a lot of Christian, had a lot of Christian type language, as well as Buddhist and Advaita type spiritual connection to it. And that's what I was involved in at that time. But it was really, I felt unstable. I felt like I didn't know what information to turn to or which to trust, if it even made sense to bring all of them together, if they all were not supposed to be together, and that's why I just didn't fit in my mind. But I was going through this experience of constantly being pulled into Christianity and then being like turned off to it. And it was really troubling for me. And it really started when I decided to get baptized as a Christian. I don't even know what age I was. It might have been like 23. So like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was like 20. I can't remember the exact year, but I do remember.
Yeah. And it was weird. It's like, not weird, but it was divine, because I felt like I was plagued by this. Do I be a Christian? Am I going to hell? Like, if I don't believe, or should I just follow my own stuff? Like, I don't know what to do. And I felt like I had reached a point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if this is real. So I dived into it. And I didn't just dive into it and go to church and be submissive and listen to what everyone was saying. I did listen to what they were saying, but I was taking note And then I was doing my own research. And upon doing that, I figured out a lot of really upsetting stuff. And I saw a lot of lies being spread. So that really turned me off and forced me to dive deeper and find my own connection with source. But it was still like I was being programmed. So at the same time, I had this aspiration of leaving the program, but it was still there and like rooted in me almost. And when I came out here to Arcata, I remember doing poetry and like talking about Christ and like God. And I remember experiencing times where I'm like, all of this stuff is happening and it's wanting me to turn back to Christ. And like, I was just going back and forth a lot. But then there just came a point when I was like, I just didn't believe it anymore. And I felt like I couldn't be without any belief or without any faith or spiritual connection. So I just dived deeper into Kemetic, and I dived deeper into, not too deep to be honest, but I dived into Ifa and into the Dagara culture and just looked more at indigenous cultures. And that helped to dismantle that programming that was in me. So Journey to a Mentor is like my journey to that state of consciousness, of that African indigenous state of consciousness. And almost every poem in there alludes to Africa or Kemet in some sort of way, or nature. And a lot of the titles are actually in Medu Nature. And I'm not an expert in Medu Nature, but I still decided to put the titles in the way that I thought, was going to be correct. And it turned out to be a really empowering project for me, and the amazing thing is that it was all created over time. Maybe the last couple of poems I did intentionally to fill in the gaps, but this was actually just my experience, my poetic and spiritual experience. So it's literally just my journey on this path towards the consciousness that I have now. And yeah, actually kind of had like put it away and not really thought about it for some time, but this is like really a powerful project for me, has been.
So you mentioned that you kind of took a change of direction with your poetry, with your music at some point. And I noticed it, I saw it myself, and my poetry started to also transform. But your poetry started to transform into more of like a very like empowering and more like Afrocentric kind of expression. What was it like to kind of to share that publicly, especially in a community that is not a community that isn't very diverse? Because the community that we both were sharing poetry in, racially at least, is not very diverse. So what was it like for you to express in this very powerful but new way?
It was kind of scary. I didn't really know how people were gonna react at first when I started to implement more Afrocentric ideas into my poetry. I also was worried that I would take it too far somehow, and like become a little bit radical. But then at some point, it seemed to be my responsibility as an Alkebuite person in this community to let people know how I feel and how we feel and how I'm powerful and we're powerful. So when it came to that point, I was just on fire. And a lot of times there was some poems that I wrote specifically after the time of George Floyd's murder where I was expressing some anger, and I didn't hold it back. I expressed it fully. And that's something that I find is the beauty in spoken word, is that the written word itself is powerful, but the way that you speak it gives it even more power.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put as much power into it as I can, because I really wanted people to feel it. I wanted people to know where I was coming from, and to know that at the same time that I was expressing all of this fire, I also have tremendous love. And that's the only reason that there's so much fire inside of me, because of that. And it was a really transformational experience for me to express these ideas to the community. And then it was even more empowering when I was able to express it in front of crowds of people that looked like me, because in their responses to me, it was like there's a possibility of relating that's not possible with people that,
Don't have the experience.
don't have the experience. Like, I received a lot of love from people that don't have the experience. But there's just a level which is impossible for them to relate, Overall, it has been a very transformational experience, not only for me as a poet, but as a speaker and as a leader. It really put me in a position, I feel, of responsibility towards this community.
So, how was it received by the community?
For the most part, it was received well. People really appreciated it. And I think for a lot of people, they've seen my evolution since being here. So for them, it was probably like they were proud, and I could sense that. And I could sense that they were on my side, And a couple of people I saw were they were shown to not be allies from their response.
Right. So it was
They're
a good way. It was a good way of like kind of seeing who was really your allies and who was not. I like that.
Right. And when I saw that, I went in even harder. When I saw people like doing weird faces and stuff, I was like, ooh, let me go in even harder, put you on the spot, because you here and you ain't even really here, Yeah. So overall, it's beneficial, I feel.
I used to have the same feeling when before I had my locks. It was like the people who kind of turned me down and turned away from me weren't people I ultimately wanted around me anyways. Those were people who probably had a lot of judgments towards themselves that they couldn't see me in the first place. And I think it's the same thing, you expressing that powerfully and possibly triggering people. It's just showing them something that they can't confront within themselves. And then once they can't see themselves, they can't see you either. And it's not like they can't eventually come around, but it just shows you who to really spend your energy on, and that just comes down to also authentic expression. If you express yourself authentically, you might not be everybody's friend, but that's okay, because you'll actually be somebody's real friend because they know you. So I don't know how much time has passed, but I feel like a lot of time has passed, and I'm gonna want to talk to you plenty times in this series. So I think we're gonna wrap it up for now. If you could just tell the people, where could they find you? Where could they find your ebooks? Like, how could they sign up for your classes?
So pretty much the universal place to reach me is Instagram, and to inquire about classes or the chapbook. And my Instagram is Bamidele, which is spelled BAMIDELE_555. Again, I'm pretty sure you'll post it.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on here.
555. I'm also open to receiving texts. So if you text me at 707-499-8441, either to inquire about classes or the chapbook or anything else, really, I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
I am gonna put this on YouTube, so I wouldn't suggest putting your number out there.
It's already out there, but that's the thing, is I put it on my Instagram too. And that's what I tell people, like, text me. You know, if you call me, I'm not gonna answer, because if I see a number that I don't know, I'm not answering it. But you could text me. That's not an issue.
Okay, cool.
And right now, it's about to be May. So I've been offering classes Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, pretty much every week through April. And I'll probably be doing the same up until the second week of May. So if y'all are interested in knowing more about that, you could just come to my Instagram, and I got a bunch of posts about it. Monday is going to be Zoom class, so that'll be available for everyone who is not local to Arcata, but the Saturday and Sunday classes are in person unless there's rain, which today was rain. And I'm also offering private sessions all through the week. So if you don't happen to be able to make a class, you can always schedule a private session. And I also am considering figuring out how I want to offer like group sessions. So like if, say you have a group of 3 or 4 people and you want to join a Zoom class, then y'all could like pitch in together for it and do that. So there's that option as well. I want to make my offers available to everyone on every budget, but I also want to be true to my self-worth. So my private sessions are going to be more pricey than my group sessions or classes. And I got a lot of ideas in the works, so just stay following me, and yeah, we'll be able to engage in this practice, this lifestyle.
All right. And if you can explain the way that we usually sign out, what that means. I've been saying it a lot in my videos. So
What you are referring to is Ankh Uja Seneb Hotep, right?
mm-hmm.
This was, I believed, inscribed somewhere in Kemet, and originally it was translated to mean life, prosperity, and health. Might have been the other way around, might have been life, health, prosperity. But this was kind of used as like a greeting, or like even like a departure from somebody. And Hotep means supreme peace. So together, this is like almost a prayer in leaving or in greeting someone of life, health, prosperity, and supreme. And it's just really a cool way to engage with Mother Nature. by saying that phrase.
Well, thank you, brother, for sharing your wisdom, sharing your art, and just sharing your beautiful energy. So we're gonna end the interview right here. Oh, I forgot about myself. If you're interested in my music or my breathwork services, you can check me out at Raw Holistic Hip Hop. I'll put that somewhere over here. And I actually got a new song coming out. May 13th is the date that I've set for it. My brother's already heard it. He got the exclusive. And yeah, I'll also put in the link below in the description below a link to the song I have out now. So, Ankh, Uja, Sened, Hotep family. Any last words?
Oh, okay. I want to say thank you for facilitating this conversation, and also for the beautiful energy that you emit, and for being my twin, for coming in this life with me in this journey. Yeah, I love you. And
too, bro.
For the whole community, even though I don't know you, I love you. So yeah, y'all are gonna see us more often. Ankh, Uja, Sened, Hotep.
Hotep.